Eyes in the dark.
Okay, so I don't really know how to start this story off, but it just happened like an hour ago, and I'm still pretty spooked. So a bit of preface. Me and my friend are home alone right now, and have been for a few hours. Every time he comes over, we go to the woods by my house, and it's normally uneventful, with some throwing rocks and breaking trees and stuff. Harmless fun. But this time, something else had happened. Like I said, we're home alone, and have been for a while. And while this happened, we were obviously home alone. We went outside to go to the woods, and the trip there was uneventful. But once we got there, something was off. Everything was dark. Tons of trees had been knocked down, and the entire place was not like I remembered it being. We kept going on, still having our usual harmless fun, and at one point, my friend turned to me and said that we should go back. I looked at my phone and decided that it had only been 30 minutes, so we might as well stay a little bit longer, 'cause it'll be a few hours until anyone wants us to be home. We continued on, finding a few strange things, like an old crushed Mountain Dew can, probably 10 to 20 years old, a toy boat which had been completely destroyed by the wind and water and other things, and was probably even older than the can. Our plan was to go further than I had ever been into the woods, which isn't very hard for us, because I've barely been that deep. After walking for a little while, we came to a landmark that I knew that marked the deepest that I have ever been. A while ago, when I was going far in, I came upon a bridge built on a log that fell over a river in the middle of the woods. However, one thing was different. There was something sitting on top of it. Whatever it was pretty small and resembled the head of an animal. When we got closer and a good view of it, it was a deer skull, purely white and clean, sitting on the bridge, with no clue as to who put it there and where the rest of it was. Behind the river there was a huge hill with a creepy small house on it. And while we were looking around, I heard a creak or some other high-pitched noise from up towards it. Freaked out, we began to run, and from behind me I could hear my friend scream. I hear him screaming, running right behind me. As we were both running, and once we reached the edge of the woods, we step onto the road. I asked him why he screamed. He said that he heard footsteps next to him. We quickly made our way home, and when we got there, the garage door was open. Not knowing if it was left open or not, we ran inside, locking the doors, checking the house, and turning on the alarm. Now we're sitting here, and by the time I finish it, it's nearly 2 hours since, and I still can't shake the fear of that eerie woods from me. I was at my favorite aunt and uncle's house the day before my 6th birthday, and would also be staying the night there, giving my parents time to get the house ready. The day had already been a blast. We had gotten ice cream, I had gotten to play at the park, and help my aunt out at the pharmacy. I don't know why, but for some reason, I loved going there. I've always been shy, and all the people made me nervous. So I think that it was just because I got to spend time with my aunt. Anyways, back to the story. We got back from my aunt's work, and she went inside to start making dinner. Meanwhile, I played catch out in the backyard with my uncle, laughing when their dog barked at us. A few minutes in, my uncle accidentally threw the ball into the woods. "I'll get it," I yelled, and then took off. I don't remember exactly what happened in the woods, but I do remember finding the ball, and then turning around to find that I had no idea how to get back out. After that, my memory gets pretty fuzzy, but this is what I was told. "Isabella," my uncle yelled when he saw me, looking half scared and half relieved. "You were in there for about 10 minutes. What happened?" I handed him the ball and said with a grin, "I got lost, and I was scared, but then Mr. S. helped me find my way out." Mr. S., my uncle had made a face as he looked down at me. None of the neighbors called themselves that. In fact, I knew all of the neighbors. I smiled back and nodded. "Yep." "Dinner time," my aunt calls out from the back door before he could even ask me anything else. At the table, once we started eating, my aunt had spoken up. Apparently she heard me out in the backyard. "Who's Mr. S? I'd like to thank him for helping you." I shrugged. "I don't know. He was out in the woods." Can you tell us what he looked like? My uncle had asked me. I looked at them and said, I kid you not. He was really, really tall and didn't have a face. That's nice, my aunt had just laughed, assuming that I was talking about an imaginary friend of some sort. Fast forward to last year. I was 17 years old, and with my aunt once again. She was staying with us for a week, looking for a new house. I was on my couch, playing Slender, the Arrival on my laptop. She walked over and asked what I was doing, then froze. What is it? I asked, giving her a confused look. She pointed at the screen and said, That thing. What's it called? Slender Man, I said. Why? My aunt asked me if I remembered the day before my 6th birthday. I nodded and told her that I remembered some of it. She proceeded to tell me about how I said Mr. S helped me find my way out of the woods, and how the description of what I gave of him matched Slender Man's. I couldn't have known anything about creepypasta at that age, so that really freaked me out. So I used to hear a ton of stories about ghosts, and also watch a lot of horror movies. But since I had never experienced any ghost encounters, I was just a guy that was like, meh, these ghost things are created by humans just to make money, while making movies about it, and all other serials featuring ghost hunters. Alright, let's get on to the story. One day, me and my 2 friends visited the spooky forest. Not nearby, but we managed to get there just to check it out, as we love the natural atmosphere. You know, giving my lungs some adrenaline of fresh air. The time we reached there was about 7 p.m., when it was already getting dark. And just to let you know, there's no light source in the forest except for the entrance and exit of the forest area, so it was much darker than we expected. My friend had his Apple, and I had my Tab with dual flash, so we decided to use them to at least see each other. An hour had passed by while we were having conversation and smoking cigarettes. We were sitting under a tree, as it was thick enough for all of us to lay our backs on and sit and relax. We were having a good time until we started hearing a sound, like 2 rocks are smashing into each other, or 1 rock smashing on the ground, again and again. We were pretty confused. I told my friend that it must be a cat trying to climb a tree, making the weak branches fall off, making it sound like the rock thing. But it didn't stop for like 3 or 4 minutes. Now, after some minutes that had passed, it stopped for a little while. We were still assuming that it was an animal doing these sounds. Things went silent for 5 minutes. We started our conversation about this forest's atmosphere being so windy and cold. Then apparently a rock fell on my friend's head. I wonder how a rock can be up there on a tree. Just in 4 or 5 seconds, a small branch from the tree fell on my lap, scaring the shit out of me. And once again my friend felt like water drops falling on his neck from up the tree. How is there still a chance of water dropping from a tree when the rainy season was already over 2 months ago? This night was clearly not our lucky night, as we heard the same sound of the rock smashing once again, but now it sounds like it's getting closer. Immediately, without any options to choose, we decided to run out of the forest as quickly as we could. We left the forest safe and sound and headed to our homes. After a few days of the incident, one of our friends posted in the news about the same forest. There was a huge tower just like a lighthouse, as said by the post. We saw that tower from a distance, but didn't get closer as it was a rocky area, and there is a chance that one of us might fall off the small cliff. So in the post, a boy was passing by the tower, and the first thing he saw was a person, but only his head. The post also said the police couldn't find the body, but also just the head of the man, which was already found by the same person who saw it while passing by. The question is, what happened to this guy? How in the world can this ever happen to someone? It could be the drug addicts who make this forest to go and get high with brown sugar, or this guy is a drug addict getting his head torn off by someone. The weird experience we had a few days ago in the same forest, was the same guy doing it after death? My questions are yet unanswered. And I never visited that forest again, and neither did anyone else. Let me tell you some backstory first. I'm a 14-year-old boy from Ohio, and frequently spent time playing in his woods that he owns. It all started when we were exploring a new part of an area in the woods. While we were walking down the muddy and slippery trail, I started hearing talking. Now, grant that I have a wild imagination, I know this wasn't my head, because my friend looked over and had this "who are they" expression. As we got closer, I could smell the scent of weed in the air. Now, I don't live in the greatest of neighborhoods, so this wasn't uncommon. After smelling this, I spoke softly to my friend. "Dude, we have to get out of here, like now." But he was intently listening to the conversation that they were having, and wanted to get closer. I then said, "Why the hell would we want to do that? Look, we need to go now." But he was already moving closer, so I had to go with him. I wasn't going to just leave him there. I was his friend. As we moved closer, I started to hear the conversation better and more clear. They said, "Where are we going to put the body?" The first man said in a deep and grumbly voice. The second man said in a more higher voice, "Don't worry about it. The coyotes will get to it. It's just the deer." That's when my friend made the mistake for moving, and a branch snapped. I, being the older one, told him to run while I ran down the opposite direction of the two men who happened to have gone after me. When they stopped to catch their breath, I took the chance to climb a tree about 20 or 30 feet up. When the men rounded the corner, they ran right by. After about 10 minutes, I heard them coming over once again. I held my breath. They ran right past me, and I again counted until it had been about 10 minutes, then proceeded to climb down the tree. I then ran as fast as I could up the path and through my friend's yard. He was there waiting for me. I told him not to tell his parents, because I still wanted to play. But since then, I have never been down there without at least 2 pocket knives. I guess I'll start with a background. I'm a 33-year-old female, but the story takes place when I was a teenager, living in a suburb of Chicago. The village that I lived in was quiet and middle class. We lived like a mile from the police station, and the worst crimes that we had was a murder or two, and maybe a robbery. Once in a blue moon, 99% of the time. Boring and more boring. Unless you have a car, you were stuck with just walking around the park at night with your friends. Definitely boring. Anyways, one night, my girlfriend and I decided to go hang out at a park with some guys at around 12 a.m. The night was a bit windy and had a full moon. I even got a kiss that night from the boy that I liked. But the night wasn't just fun and hanging out late. There's a deep forest in the park with a stream, with a playground right next to it. The same playground we went to, with swings and a jungle gym columns. There's 2 bridges, one of wood, the one that everyone uses, and wooden bridge made out of rocks that's rarely used because it is deeper in the forest. Over the stream, connecting the 2 halves of the forest park area. I'll get to the rock bridge in a minute. We hung around on the swings and chatted. Just spent the evening together. I'm sitting and just looking around, talking and enjoying the peace and quiet and the moonlight. I have a full view of the forest and the dip of earth that I know leads to the stream. I see something moving over that dip of earth. Some dark shape. It looked like it was crawling out of the forest. An arm, then another arm. It pulls itself out of the ditch. A figure darker than the surrounding forest. And I'm sitting there, frozen. I think that I'm seeing things. It just kind of lays there, on the ground, and doesn't move. A flash of fear grips me. What if it comes this way? I look to my friends, and no one notices anything. I look back, and it's gone. Did it go back, or go somewhere? I really wanted to get out of there. Then one friend asked me, "Did you guys hear about the urban legend of the rock bridge over the stream?" Apparently, some kids or something played on the bridge and fell over and died. What a thing to say after what I saw. But I didn't ask anyone anything, and just pretended that I didn't see anything. But the experience stuck with me. I never talk about it, because it must have been my imagination. Things like that happen only in scary movies, right? But I rarely went to that park after that. And the black thing, if you are real, I hope that I never see you again. Who knows what would have happened if you saw me the same time that I saw you. Now, this isn't a scary story, but more of a creepy one. My friend's dad's family came to live in the woods near Eureka Springs, Arkansas. My friend's uncle was the oldest of the 3 kids and was allowed to explore the woods on his own, even though he was only about 9 years old. One day he came across a little cottage nestled in the woods. He knocked on the door and was greeted by 2 older ladies. He promptly asked for some water, as he had been exploring for hours. The ladies invited him in and gave him milk and cookies, sat down and talked with him while he pet their white cat. They talked for a little while, and they eventually invited him to stay for dinner and spend the night, because it was getting dark, and he was a ways from home. His parents were pretty used to him being in the woods for nights without coming back, so he accepted without any questions. He spent the night without incident and returned home the next morning. He visited many more times over the next year, and one day they told him that to bring his parents and brothers the next time that he came. So the next week, the whole family embarked on the long trek to the cottage. When they arrived, however, they found the remains of a small cottage that appeared to have been abandoned for years. Everyone was very confused, as they all trusted that my friend's uncle had visited the woman many times. They had absolutely no idea what had happened, or if my friend's uncle had actually been visiting anybody. To make things even weirder, as they were leaving, an old skinny white cat ran past them, darting into the trees, leaving them in utter shock.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.